talk about Season 2 of Justice Talk, where it's just us talking.
And what is Justice Talk?
Justice Talk is a podcast where we talk about the Douglas County Sheriff's Office and the community we serve.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Deputy Jason Blanchard with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office here on the podcast, joined by the lovely and always delightful Deputy Kosha Hayden. Hi, Kosha.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. You don't sound like you were
I know, I sound like I've been smoking cigarettes, and I'm not a smoker, and I don't have a cold. I don't know what it is. Maybe yelling at my kids or
seasonal.
maybe yelling at my husband or something. I don't know.
It's cold outside, is that?
It is. It's terrible. I'm sick of the cold.
No joke. Well, today we have a real special episode, one we're excited to have, where we're just talking about a little bit about the background some deputies have come from.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. I mean, we have over, 500 employees in the office, and I guarantee you we're not going to run into the same story of how people got into law enforcement.
Right, and we have a wide variety of people. I know we have some people that have even been doctors in previous lives.
Yeah.
We've got
attorneys.
Attorneys. We've got people that have come from a really wide variety of backgrounds.
Some even firefighters, too.
Yeah.
I know.
No, just
I know.
Oh, no, we love our brothers and sisters in red.
Yeah, absolutely.
I almost said blue. But
I know. Well, we do love our
we love our brothers and sisters
blue.
in blue also.
Yeah.
Well, for me personally, I came from a background as a research biologist of all things.
Wow.
I went to the University of Arizona, studied biology, and worked in that field for a really short time. Hated every moment, and decided, what am I going to do with myself?
Right.
And as I started kind of searching around, I realized that public service was where my real calling was, and that's how I, through a long path of misdirection, ended up here in law enforcement.
Yeah, because you started with us as a dispatcher, right?
As a dispatcher, yeah.
Yeah.
So I became an EMT, lifeguard, all that kind of stuff,
Wow.
trying to figure out what I was going to do. That's where kind of got my feet wet in public
Right.
service, and then eventually started as I started dispatching for the ambulance service I was working for. That's when I said, hey, can I take this anywhere? That brought
Yeah.
me to Douglas County. And then I said, maybe I'll be in law enforcement. I thought I always wanted to be a firefighter. Honestly,
God, what is it with you guys?
I thought playing video games all day sounded really good.
I know. What does it?
No, reality is I knew that I wanted to go into public service. I didn't have any calling one direction or the other personally. It was just eventually I said, I'll come in dispatch, get my feet in the water, kind
Right.
of start dabbling and see if I can get on with one of these local fire agencies. And that's when I got introduced to law enforcement. Honestly, when a lot of people I grew up with look at me, they say, you're going to become a cop?
Yeah, how did you become a cop? Yeah, exactly.
Because I do have a colorful past, but
Yeah.
that's probably a story for another day. How about you?
You are pretty colorful.
Colorful indeed.
Well, it's funny if you think about it, and I don't know if it's maybe a West Coast, Central, East Coast thing. A lot of times law enforcement officers come from a long line of law enforcement officers. I had no law enforcement in my family whatsoever. I mean, my stepdad was a military man, but I had never even held a gun, never even really thought about it until I went to college, and I had a really good criminal justice class with a ex-Chicago police officer, and I thought, this is kind of cool. And I actually didn't even really think about becoming a street cop per se. I just thought I could, do something with kids. I like, helping people. And I went to the police academy a long time ago, probably even before our special guest Zach was even alive. But I don't know. When were you born, Zach?
87.
Okay, so maybe you were just a couple of years old when I went to the academy. But I just went because I thought, this is the next step. I went to college. I actually saw a posting for a police academy, and I thought, well, I don't really have anything else going on. I'll give it a try. And I was the only female in my academy, and Douglas County actually came for a career day, and they were looking for a female to work in their jail. And to me, I was like, score. I can, have a job. I don't have to, look too hard. And, 28 years later, here I am.
Very cool. Very cool. And I guess that kind of brings us into some other backgrounds that have.
Yeah.
Today we're joined by some very special guests. We've got both Zach and Haley Zapeski, married, obviously.
Yeah.
Zach, you work for us here at the sheriff's office
Yep.
as a deputy on patrol, right?
Yep.
Pretty new with us, but have a background
Yeah,
with some
pretty-
other law enforcement, right?
Yeah. A couple other places. I worked 6 or 7 years with DOC, something around there, and then a year with Aurora before coming here.
Excellent. And then before you went to the road, you were in the jail?
Yep. I was for about a year.
And what did you think about that? I mean, I know a lot of our newer officers that don't have any experience, they try to send them through the jail to get them a little bit of, get their feet wet. What did you think about your experience in the jail?
So I actually started my entire law enforcement career. I started in the halfway houses when I was 18, working in the kitchens of halfway houses. And then from there, moved into DOC. And I'll say, before working DOC or anything of that nature, talking to people was hard. But if you can talk to people in the criminal justice system, in the jails, you can really talk to anyone.
Absolutely.
So I tell all the new guys, we've got a lot of every department I think right now has a lot of young people coming through. And I tell them, because they all want to go to the road and do the fun stuff, I tell them, if you do a year or two in the jail, it's going to make your life outside a lot easier. And most people have a really long law enforcement career.
Right.
So 1 or 2 years in the jail in a 30-year career is really nothing.
Yeah.
And you learn probably some of the most you're going to learn in a jail setting.
I agree. I was 22 when I started, and I was not used I came from a small town. I wasn't used to being around people that, and, just because you're in jail doesn't make you a bad guy, but I wasn't used to being around people like that. So I think it helped me. I spent 3 years in the jail before I moved to patrol, and I think it helped me talk to people. I kind of learned when people were running games on you, and I felt more comfortable talking to people after spending that time in the jail. So I think it's definitely valuable.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when I left DOC, I left as a supervisor. So coming here and having to do the normal job again was really hard for me. I was like, I don't do that. Oh, wait, I do all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure being in DOC was, and then coming to what do we call it? Club Doug?
Club Doug.
I heard that before I even applied. I said, you want to work at Club Doug? I said, yeah, it should be simple. And no jail simple, but
yeah,
it was a good transition.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah. So why don't you tell us, to kind of give a context to this particular podcast, is you actually reached out to us, Zach, saying that you had an interesting story to share with us about your childhood and ending up in law enforcement. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I had a colorful childhood. I just want to preempt it by saying I'm not looking to get a pity party, anything like that. I just have actually never really told my story. And I talk to people every single day in this job that have had a similar, both worse or better childhood than I had, and that you can actually rise above things. So I do have some law enforcement in my family. I have some guys who work with Denver who worked there for 30, 40 years, but we didn't really meet or interact with them. I actually found out once I became an officer that I had family in Denver. But no, I grew up, I was originally born and grew up in Sheridan, Colorado, which is, now I'm just finding out, which is not a very good city anymore. But grew up with a mom and a dad at first, like normal, and around 8 years old, my father left. And now, once I got older, I figured out he left for a good reason. He was an alcoholic, and he had some drug issues and things like that. And he actually left to move back to Iowa to move in with his mother and get his life back together. And he left me with my mom and my 2 sisters. And we kind of did what we could. My mom worked when she could and tried to take care of us. We luckily lived around my grandmother also. So my grandmother took pretty good care of us, as much as a elderly woman could. But so as time went on and I grew up, started to notice some things. My mother had a drinking problem, and she wasn't a good drunk by any means. She didn't really know how to take care of us. And she told us one day that she wasn't drinking anymore, and we were all very happy and very thrilled. And she actually, I think, went 6 or 7 years without alcohol. But come to find out, while she wasn't drinking, she had substituted that for drugs.
Oh, wow.
So we spent a lot of time kind of on our own. My mom slept a lot of the day. She wasn't really present at all through our childhood. But my sisters and I, that kind of brought us closer together. And one of my sisters kind of went on the wrong side of the tracks, I would say. And then,
putting it lightly.
Yeah. She's thus gotten her life together and is better off now. But my other sister, I'm the youngest of 3. So I was unfortunately the only boy of 2 girls. But my other sister, we kind of stuck together as much as we could. So we lived in Lakewood, and we went to the Lakewood Jefferson County schools. And I don't know if I put off an air or if I really made it seem like I didn't have a good childhood, but I happened to have a pretty good school resource officer who I must have stuck out to him. He always knew who I was. He always made sure that he said hi to me or knew if I was getting into trouble or not. And that school resource officer followed me, went out while I was in Jeffco schools, throughout my schools. He knew who I was, who I hung out with, everything like that. And I didn't realize at the time that would actually affect me, because even then I didn't think I wanted to be a cop.
Were you any kind of troublemaker back then, or were you pretty straight-laced?
Back then I wasn't really much of a troublemaker. Like I said, people say now that I have a boisterous personality, but back then I was super shy. I just stuck to myself and wasn't very self-confident. And so I didn't really get into trouble, but I did hang out with, I think, kids who were like me, who didn't have the best childhood. So those kids were kind of on the rough side. And I think it's maybe why I stuck out to him.
Zach and I actually dated for the first time when we were 16, and I could tell initially that he was a good guy, even though he came from a very different upbringing than I had. My family was not so thrilled about me dating someone that came from where Zach came from. So I say that just he was definitely hanging around with the wrong people. That luckily he knew how to push, or not when to cross the boundary, but I mean,
in her defense, I thought I was Eminem.
He did. He wore the
Wow.
He wore the white tank top and the
Nice.
I had the
gold
bleach hair.
snake chain.
Did he have the bleach blonde hair?
Yes.
I did.
Yeah, my father was thrilled.
Oh, I'm sure he was really.
Thrilled.
Now, have you guys been dating since then, or did you not? Did you stop dating? Or
No,
did you-
we stopped dating. Both kind of went and did our own thing, and then reconnected after I graduated college.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
About 23, and my dad. At the time, I told him I was dating Zach Spesky again, and he said, "Why, Haley?"
Please tell me he stopped dyeing his hair.
He said he has a normal hair color now.
Yeah.
But now my family just thinks the world of him, the absolute world of him.
Well, I think it's really interesting that somebody can come from a background that most people don't expect to lead to law enforcement. Can you tell how that started clicking for you?
So it's, let's see, that's a hard question. So I had a choice. One of my sisters had a child at 15 or 16. I think I was either 12 or 13. I can't recall exactly. And at that age, you're just not apt to have a child. So my other sister and I kind of started raising her, because she left her with my mom and she moved out. And my mom at the time was unable to take care of us, let alone an infant. So my sister and I started taking care of her, and her name is Mari. And we had some rough times. We got evicted a lot. There was a lot of times I'd wake up to a knock on the door, and it was the sheriff's office saying, "You got to pack your stuff." And I can actually tell you, I do remember, we lived in Lakewood at the time. I can tell you the look on the lady's face one day whenever I opened the door and she was there to evict us. It looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world.
And that was a police officer who
Yeah.
was coming to evict?
Yeah, she had to come and evict us. And we had no idea,
Yeah.
obviously. I mean, my mom, she did her best to hide it from us. Yeah, I can tell you, I remember her looking, 2 little kids and a baby, and a mom passed out on the couch. And, you know, I understand now, I'm older, and I get why they did what they did. But that was just normal for me. It was just, okay, well, looks like we're moving somewhere else. It was either, if we didn't have a roof over our head, at least we had food in our stomachs. If we didn't have food in our stomachs, at least we had a roof over our head. So we always kind of found the bright side of it. But I remember there was a lot of instances when things would get really bad at home. And I'd look out the window and say my mom and I are screaming and yelling at each other. I'd look out the window and I'd see the police had arrived. Somebody had called the police. And I looked at it as kind of a beacon of hope. They knock on the door and everything stopped. All the problems stopped. All the yelling stopped. My mom turned into a different person. She was the nicest person in the world. Oh, nothing's going on. Nothing's wrong. And I was too young to, tell them what was really going on. And I'd never been one to talk about myself, even at that age, about what was going on. So I just bucked up and took it as, this was an hour to myself to be safe and not be worried and just know everything was going to be okay. So that's probably where it started. It was nice just having a moment of peace when the police arrived. So I never had a fear of them, anything like that.
Well, and that's what I would hope that law enforcement out there, if any law enforcement are listening, is that they can be that for any kids they might be coming in contact with, not to mention adults, but be that beacon of hope for people, knowing that we have a job to do, unfortunately, but sometimes it's unfortunate, but we have to do what we have to do to get things done appropriately and following the law. But hopefully that there's a lot of officers out there that realize that they can be that for people that may be coming up in a hard life.
Yeah, and that's something I realize now is I never told those guys, hey, you're saving me, you're making me feel safe right now. But we do that every day. We've all been in homes and stuff with children who are going through a hard time. They may not run up and say, hey, thank you. But just know, even if you don't know it or not, you are making a difference for a moment and possibly for the rest of someone's life.
Well, and I think that was a big reason that Zach wanted to move from Department of Corrections into being an active patrol, just because when you're working in the prison, you don't have as much of an opportunity to make that impact, to change that one kid's life, to be that beacon of hope, like he said. So he was a lieutenant with Department of Corrections. He could have had a great career there, but he knew that he wanted to give back. He wanted to help kids that had been in the position that he had been in. And he has downplayed a lot of what has happened. The alcohol abuse was severe. I had been in the house at times with his mother pounding down the door, and I have his 6-year-old niece in my lap as she's trying to break down a door in a bedroom because she thought that Zach had taken her alcohol. I mean, and I only saw very small glimpses.
It's scary to see what alcohol and or drugs can do to somebody. Somebody who can be the nicest person in the world can flip that switch as soon as a little bit of, substance gets involved, and they become scary. Like it can be a scary, scary environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Zach, how do you think that you made that transition? I mean, for everything you've gone through, and you were still able to go to school, take care of your siblings, take care of your niece. I mean, it's like, how did you survive? How did you not become what your mother was or what your dad was?
So I would say I'm a product of necessity. So if I blame a lot of my success on my niece, and I probably don't do a good enough job telling her, but when you have a small child, and you are a small child, you're just born to take care of them. It's just natural for you to want to take care of them. So as times got harder, and my sister, it's going to sound awful, but luckily was in a car accident. She got a big, relatively large settlement. So she was paying the rent of the house we were in. And once that money started to run out, it was either you're going to school or you're going to work. So around the age of 15 or 16, I ended up quitting school. Wow. And I went and worked at a local barbecue restaurant for about 40 hours a week. And I love that job. I have a very low work history. I worked there for like 8 years. But I went and I worked there, and I was paying rent. My sister and I were doing all that we can to make sure my niece was taken care of and we had a roof over our head. And I still consider them almost parents. I'm still in contact with the people in the restaurant. They did their best, bless their heart, to keep me in school and have me go to school and go to work. They were big parts of telling me, no, don't be here, go to school. But it just, unfortunately, at the time wasn't a possibility.
Right. Well, I mean, at 15 years old, and you were, adult enough to realize that I have to forego school because I have to take care of my family. I mean, because think about it, if you would have just chucked it all, probably social services would have got involved, people would have been separated, and who knows where you would end up being. So obviously something inside of you, whether it was genetics somewhere or something, you knew that this is what you had to do. You had to take care of your family. And I mean, what a noble thing. I mean, we all have kids, and, my 15-year-old, I don't even think knew how to make a bowl of cereal, so kudos to you for no one taught you that. You just knew. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, and my sister she was a big help too. If I was at work, she was taking care of, she probably did most of the work with my niece at that age because I was at work. Right. But, it was different, but it was normal to me, and became normal to her. and it was something we weren't running around telling everybody what was really going on. But if you knew us, you kind of had a feeling, and it was, I don't know, it was just something we had to do.
So you dropped out of high school. When did you choose to go back and get, is it GED, I assume? Yeah.
Yeah, I call it, I got my good enough degree.
Hey, that's all you need.
I had a very Irish grandmother who had the greatest soul in the world, but she was a hard lady to get along with. If you were family, she'd do anything for you. And but she did not hide her feelings.
She had 14 kids. She was a little tired.
Yeah.
And
My mom was the youngest of all 14.
Wow.
So, I was working, and I called her one day, and I think we were just talking, and she mentioned school, and I said, "Oh no, I just got to work." She said, "Okay, well, you're doing something." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "Well, tomorrow you're going to go and you're going to get your GED." And I said, "Okay." She said, "I don't want okay. I want a yes, ma'am." And I hadn't been in school for about a year at that time, and I just said, "Okay." I went down to the Department of Education and just tried the GED, and I don't know how, but I passed it all and got my GED. So it was
Very good.
And that's awesome. Well, then, so how did you recover from all of that? I mean, what's your family dynamics now? If you would.
So unfortunately, we don't really speak anymore.
You meaning like your mom?
Me. I haven't spoken to my mother in almost a year.
Yeah.
My father and I we reconnected when I was about 16. I was unaware, but he had been trying to get a hold of us since he left. My mom didn't. She wouldn't allow any contact at all. The first time I actually talked to my father was on the day Columbine happened, because it said Lakewood, and he knew that was the area we lived, but he didn't know what school we were in or anything. And that was the first time my mom actually let him talk to us on the phone. And from then on, we were able to kind of talk a little bit. And then he actually was trying to help me as I got older and I was working and I was on my own. I spoke to him on the phone more, and he was trying his best to get me emancipated, and he was trying to help me with money and things like that to make sure I was okay. And we actually had a pretty good relationship because he got sober. He ended up getting remarried. He turned out to be the person I always wanted him to be. It was just unfortunate he wasn't there when I was younger. And he, a couple years ago, actually passed away from a brain tumor. But
I'm sorry.
But we were able to get past all of that before that happened.
Yeah.
So.
And how about family dynamic today? Like right here.
Yeah, in the studio with us.
Oh, yep. We have our little 4.5-year-old Cooper.
Who is adorable.
Cooper's awesome. He's sitting over here playing on the rare time he gets on an iPad, and we haven't heard a peep from him since.
But also
He's living his
besides
best
Cooper, what else do we have besides Cooper?
We have 18-month-old twin girls, Zoe and Ellie.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so, I mean, he is the father to our kids that I think he always wished that he had. And I am always amazed by him, how someone who grew up without a strong father figure can be such a wonderful, loving, he is the disciplinarian for sure. The kind of the hard ass, if I can say that.
You're good.
But just, I am amazed every single day by him as a husband and as a father.
But the big question, what does your dad think of him?
Oh my gosh. They talk more than I even talk to my dad.
He definitely called and prepped me for this. Okay, I blocked out an hour for you. We're going to go over what you need to say.
What you need to say. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Funny.
Well, Zach, how do you think, you touched on it a little bit, but so now you spend time in the jail, now you're on the road. And for our audience out there, if you want to get a really good glimpse of Zach, just check out I think it's on our Facebook page, our 12 Days of Christmas video.
Right.
He's in there quite a bit. So
First day of
Is
FTO,
it?
and
Oh, yeah, that's
we
right.
drug him right in.
Yeah. So if you want to check that out, go to our Facebook page. But how do you think what you've been through affects you, or how do you go day to day because you're obviously solo, you're in your own car. How does what happened to you? How do you do your job because of it? I guess I should say.
If you're a supervisor of mine, you probably hate it because I'm spending a little bit more time on calls. But
That's okay though.
I think being able to tell see the signs, see what people are actually going through. And maybe I might ask a couple more questions than somebody else would.
Right.
But I also know that we need the guys. We need the guys on the road, the big tough guys with the guns, the guys that are kicking in the doors and doing all that stuff. And I enjoy doing all that. But we also need guys like myself, or there's a lot of other people in the department that are really good at talking to people and reading signals of people. Because we go to calls a lot of the time where it's not a report, it's not anything. Well, it's usually something.
Right,
And if
yeah.
it's not something today, it was yesterday or it will be tomorrow.
Right.
So I think it's really made me realize that the job I do is important. And we all like to say it is important. And it's not just a one-way street. It's just getting out there and talking to people. And it's,
Right.
I love that nowadays it's so much more community related.
Oh, it is totally.
Because it's not just, okay, we came here, we didn't see exactly what was called out, and then we leave. It's, we come here, how are you? What's going on? I'm here. The only thing that matters in the world right now is you and I.
Yeah.
And we get a chance to talk to people. And I was actually at dinner yesterday with another deputy, and a young girl and her father came up, and she asked about a career in law enforcement. She's telling me, she wasn't very good in school, she's kind of a troublemaker, and I was able to tell her, so was I.
Yeah.
you know,
Look
I
at
said,
me, yeah,
look at
perfect.
I'm wearing a uniform, and you're supposed to do stuff when you're young. You're supposed to have fun.
Yeah.
But you can really, if you just once you decide something, you can do it. And I think that there's a lot of emphasis these days on humanizing the badge.
Right.
Because you guys know better than I do. Longer years in law enforcement, it's used to just be, okay, you've done something wrong, the cops are here. Now it's, oh man, that guy is been through exactly what I'm going through right now, but he's wearing a badge. It's nice to see that someone who's been through what I've been through can now help me or guide me in the right way. Or I'm not just saying it because I read it in a book. I'm saying it because I've been there.
You lived
If
it.
if you do this, then this will help you.
Sorry, Jason, to interrupt you, but I know also what we wanted to also talk about too before we talk to our cutest little guest here in a second, but about like opening up as a police officer, open up as an officer, because old school cops, they don't talk about their feelings, they don't talk about anxiety, they don't talk about depression. For us, I think it's so important for not only for us internally, but for the community to know that we're all human. And, for you're the one that brought it up, which was awesome, about wanting to talk about your experience more. So hopefully by you doing this, it's going to open the doors for other police officers to talk about, their backgrounds or their history, and that it's okay to be, human and sad and upset, and, and we'll get through it and stuff like that too. So,
Yeah. Well, I found out that say we're driving down the road, I'll tell my wife, hey, I used to live there. And I never realized I say that like 14 times on the same street. So I never realized it was kind of weird. And that's what triggered her to kind of want me to talk more. I have a couple of mentors who have learned my history, and they tell me, you got to use that. You got to tell people about it. And
absolutely.
we were in training, and we saw a video with a lieutenant of ours who he opened up about his whole life. And it was, I feel like he thought people were going to make fun of him. And really, it made me think, that's so cool. Like, I already liked him. He's a great guy. If you know who he is, he's an awesome guy. But it made me think, well, if he's out there telling people, and he's a cop for a lot of years, so it's harder for him to open up. If he wants to talk about it, then I can. And my history has led me to a lot of anxiety issues. I'm terrible at being tested. I loved FTO, and I learned the most I could, but I'm very anxious. I would always get worried about if I'm doing it right, if I'm not doing it right, and it just led to a lot of anxiety issues, and which then lead to issues at home. And this job alone, it kind of makes you not the best communicator at home. You're great at work, but not at home, and my wife can attest to that. But just getting out there and actually talking to someone, or we have a great peer sports system here, but I've spoken to therapists, things like it. Just once you start opening up and realizing, I don't like to do it because I don't want people to think I'm just talking about myself.
No, not at all. I think that you would be a fantastic, peer support person for the office. I mean,
I think you just got recruited.
yeah.
I'm very new to the road, so if my supervisor listening, I'm on peer support now.
Well, and that might be a good segue into Haley talking about, maybe the difference you've seen in him since he started opening up about stuff, or.
Yeah, I think for the longest time with Zach, it's not that he was embarrassed of his childhood. It was more he doesn't want people to pity him. And once he kind of opened up to me a little bit and saw I didn't pity him, it was more like, wow, you are amazing. And you have to tell your story, because if you can help one kid, think if one kid, you go to an eviction and one kid, you can be that like beacon of hope in that moment. Like you have to do that. You have to open up more. And our marriage has been better.
Excellent.
He does, he's a way better communicator than he was 5 years ago.
That's excellent.
He's able to tell me when he's had a rough day, and
Good.
if he wants to talk about it, we talk about it. If he just needs 20 minutes to himself, I've learned to just give him that 20 minutes to himself. But yeah, I mean, we still have our ups and downs, but he's
Like
he's
you're a
kinda
married couple.
Yeah, like normal. Yeah.
like a couple who's been married for 7 years with 3 kids.
Yeah, it's really nice coming home with 3 kids saying, "Hey, can I have 20 minutes?"
Yeah. She's like, yeah, I'll give you one.
Yeah.
Hey, Cooper. Cooper, you going to talk to us in here?
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Good.
Good. Can you tell us, do you love your daddy?
You want to put the
He
headphones
wants
on?
to hear himself? Yeah.
I think that'll pull in there. Will that pull in
There you go. So what do you think? Do you love your daddy?
Yeah.
Is he like the best daddy ever? What's your favorite part? What's your favorite part of hanging out with your daddy?
Whenever we spend time together.
When you have a fun time
awesome.
together? Yeah. What's your funnest thing that he does for you?
I don't really remember.
So many
That's it.
things.
So many things.
To the lake.
Oh, you like going to the lake? Does he take you fishing, or do you play out on the water? What do you do?
Next week we're gonna go fishing.
Yeah, I love fishing.
What do you do on the boat?
Surf's up.
Surf's
Surf's
up,
up,
buddy.
that's awesome.
He's throwing a shaka up. Very nice.
That's awesome.
Very good, Cooper. Well, thank you for joining us, man. We wanted to just chat with you for a minute and just let you get on the radio here. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when we get done, he gets to go see a police car.
he brought us delicious cookies.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for the cookies.
You are an excellent cook, Cooper.
Thank you.
What did your letter say?
What did your letter say?
Oh, that's right. He gave us a card.
Dear police officers, thank you for saving us from Cooper.
That's
Very
awesome.
nice.
That's
That is so
exactly why we
good.
do what we do, for sure.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I think you just made this whole
I
episode.
think, yeah.
buddy.
I think that's a good note to end on.
Very cool. I did just want to put out one more thing. Just, Zach, thank you so much for what you're doing out there, man, and being willing to open up to us. One of the things I think that every officer out there that is listening, and anybody out there listening, needs to realize is that, one, pulling from your history and sharing that is not a bad thing, because you can actually help a lot of people out there. And second, is for those of us out there that need to just take a few more minutes on a call, I think we're pushing it, and we have been pushing it for quite some time, is take those few minutes to make that connection and actually be more human and have that conversation with people. Heck, get out of your car once in a while and talk to somebody.
Right.
It's such a good thing, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Zach and Haley. You're invited back anytime. We'd love to do other segments with you. But again, we're very serious about the peer support thing. So I think you'd be a fantastic part of the team.
Yeah, and kind of on that note, I mean, I know between the video and this, I'm going to get a lot of crap about it. But if anybody just wants to sit and have a coffee or anything like that, I'm always around. But you might have to come and listen to 3 kids at the same time. But I'm
Well,
always
as
around.
long as you make cookies, I'm sure they'll be okay.
And just for reference, I don't think anybody's going to be giving you crap. I
Yeah.
think this
No,
is one of the
that's
more
great.
respectful things I've ever, respectable things I've seen
Yeah,
out here. So thank
absolutely.
you so much for reaching out to us and then getting on here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. That being said, everybody out there, just please keep listening. We love doing these and putting episodes together for you. And make sure that if you want to see this and see what we all look like, you can go check out the video on YouTube. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter
And Instagram.
and Instagram. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day. Thanks for joining us, everyone, on today's podcast.
And remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can always watch these podcasts on YouTube.